Hello everyone, and welcome to my messy library. In honor of March of the Mammoths, even though we're already a week in, I thought I would share some of my favorite Mammoth books in case you are looking for that perfect Mammoth book to read this month, or to get started on this month. So let us move these to the side. Like pull a muscle here. Okay. My first title, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This is a book that I read a few years ago and I absolutely loved it. That kind of moody, depressing story. It's set in Russia during the 1800s, I believe. And Anna Karenina is a noblewoman married to another nobleman, and she is unhappy. She is looking for excitement and spice in her life, so she decides to have an affair. So this book, some people say it's too long. I thought it was perfect, and I absolutely love this book. You see the early exciting stages of her affair, and you see the after effects of that affair and how tragic that was in those days. So this is a definite 5-star read for me. The next chunker, Mammoth, that I loved was The Luminaries. This book I read a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I loved it so much that I read it twice. So this is set in New Zealand during the gold rush, the late 1800s, and we have several different storylines converging, and at first you cannot figure out how on earth these stories are gonna connect, and it's masterfully done. Like, I loved it so much. It's moody as well. I think we're having a theme here, but yeah, fantastic book. And I don't want to give away any spoilers, but it's just so wonderfully woven together, all these different plot lines that are converging, and you never quite figure out how she's gonna do it, and then she does. So, wonderful book, The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. The next book is a historical fiction that was one of my first ever Mammoths that I ever read, and it is the autobiography of Henry VIII. So it's a novel. It's not actually him writing an autobiography, I'm sure, as you probably know. But Margaret George, I think, is a fantastic writer of historical fiction, if you're into that. But it is written as if Henry VIII is writing his own autobiography, and you see so many historical events written from his point of view, and I just love this book so much. Actually, parts of it I think are written from the point of view of his court jester, but it was wonderfully done as well. So highly recommend this one. I mentioned this one in my last video, but a lot of people's favorite, The Priory of the Orange Tree. So this book follows a couple of different storylines as well, and it takes place in a world where there is a queendom, and there are dragons, and there are people who ride dragons. So wonderfully done. I think it's pretty diverse as well, so I fell in love with this book. Highly recommend it to anybody who loves fantasy and dragons. Who doesn't love dragons? The next book, this book, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I think that's how you say it. So this book was a gift from my husband to me on my birthday a few years ago, and was recommended to him for me as a lover of Lord of the Rings. And it follows a little boy who is pretty much a prodigy at everything, but he can play music, he has powers, he can do whatever he wants. And at first I was very annoyed with the main character because he's too perfect, but it just all comes together. I have been holding off on reading book number 2 in this series because it's supposed to be a trilogy, and he still hasn't released it. It's been years. So, but I highly recommend this book if you are a lover of fantasy. Definitely a great read and a big one. And this book is so pretty. This one, I know a lot of people have mixed opinions on it, but I loved this book, and it is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. So who has never heard of Gone with the Wind? So this book takes place in the South. We follow Scarlett O'Hara and the cast of characters, Rhett Butler, Ashley, and Melanie. And it takes place during the the American Civil War. And we follow Scarlett O'Hara. She is the character that you cannot stand, and yet you love her at the same time. I wanted to like kick her several times in this book, but I also wanted her to win, and just a fantastic book. I know that there's some controversial things in here, but I also keep in mind that it was written very early on, and it is covering the American Civil War. Take with that what you will. But a fantastic book, a strong female main protagonist, and I just loved it. And to follow up with that, my last selection for March of the Mammoths, or suggestion for March of the Mammoths, is actually a play on Gone with the Wind, and it is Scarlet by Alexandra Ripley. So this is actually an approved sequel to Gone with the Wind, and I read this book several years ago as well. If you hated Scarlet in Gone with the Wind, I think you will find her more enjoyable. In this book, she goes through a lot of character development. So I really, really enjoyed this book. She goes to find herself, she travels, and I think it was a very satisfying ending after Gone with the Wind. So I highly recommend this book. But yeah, those are just some of my favorite Mammoth books. But if you plan on reading any of these books, or you like any of them, or you have read any, you hate them, love them, let me know what you think in the comments, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.